Dorian Ashvale had never been afraid of anything in his 28 years of life. He had stood in front of armies. He had walked into burning forests to pull injured wolves out of the flames. He had sat across from pack leaders twice his age and made them look away first. Fear was not something his body knew how to produce. But on the night of the mat presentation ceremony, standing in the great hall of Crestmore, with firelight moving across the stone walls and hundreds of wolves gathered in their finest clothes, something happened inside his chest that felt very close to panic. It started the moment he stepped through the main doors. His wolf Kale had always been restless, always pushing, always testing the edges of Dorian's control like a river testing a dam. But the second Dorian crossed the threshold of the hall, Kale went completely still. Then he pulled, hard, toward the left side of the room. Dorian's eyes moved there before he could stop them. She was standing near one of the stone pillars at the far edge of the crowd. She was not dressed like the candidates. She wore a simple gray dress, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes focused on the floor in front of her, as if she was trying very hard to take up as little space as possible. She looked like someone who had come to watch, not to be seen. She looked like the most important person in the room. Dorian did not move toward her. He was a king, and kings did not cross ceremonial halls because their wolves pulled them like dogs on a rope. He straightened his shoulders and walked to his seat at the head of the room and sat down, and he told himself to focus. He could not focus. His beta, Ren, leaned close from his right side. "You've gone very still," Ren said quietly. "I'm always still," Dorian said. "Not like this." Dorian said nothing. He kept his eyes on the ceremony. He kept his face calm. He kept his hands relaxed on the arms of his chair. And across the room, from the corner of his eye, he watched the woman in the gray dress grip the stone pillar beside her as if she needed it to stay standing. She felt it too, he could tell, the way her shoulders had gone rigid, the way her chin had dropped slightly, like she was trying to breathe slowly and carefully. She was fighting it, the same pull he was fighting, but she was smaller, and she was alone, and she had no throne to anchor her to one spot. He watched her close her eyes for exactly 3 seconds. Then she opened them, turned, and walked quietly out of the hall. Not fast, not in a panic. She walked the way someone walks when they are trying very hard not to be noticed, steady and soft and deliberate, and she slipped out through the side passage before anyone around her even looked up. Kale screamed inside his chest. Dorian sat completely still. By the next morning, she was gone from Crestmore entirely. He knew this because he had sent Ren to find her before the sun came up, giving only a description: gray dress, dark hair, low-ranking attendant, somewhere near the left pillar, and Ren had come back 2 hours later with a name and very little else. Seraphine Caldwell, daughter of Aaron Caldwell, who had betrayed the Crestmore pack 11 years ago. Low-ranking bloodline, no formal position, no pack affiliation. She had come as a personal attendant to one of the high-born candidates, and had apparently packed her single bag and left the guest quarters sometime between midnight and dawn. Ren placed the paper on the desk between them and waited. "Is there anything else?" Dorian asked. "Do you want me to follow her?" Dorian looked at the name on the paper for a long time. "No," he said finally. She had walked away. She had made a choice. He was many things, but he was not the kind of man who chased someone who had decided to leave. He went back into the great hall that evening and completed the ceremony. He stood through every introduction. He looked at every candidate with steady eyes and said the appropriate words, and was, by all accounts, perfectly composed. He dismissed every single one of them. The elders were furious. His council called 3 emergency meetings in 1 week. 2 neighboring packs withdrew from alliance talks, taking the dismissals as an insult to their daughters. Ren sat across from him in the war room and asked, with the particular calmness of someone asking a very dangerous question, who was she? Dorian picked up the next document on his desk. "My wolf did not confirm a match," he said. "I will not bond for politics." Ren did not push further. He had known Dorian long enough to understand where the walls were. What Ren did not know, what nobody knew, was that Dorian spent 2 weeks after the ceremony tracking a faint thread of scent across 3 counties. cedar bark and something warm and faintly sweet, like rain on dry earth. He followed it carefully, quietly, alone, telling his guards he needed to travel for border inspection. The scent went cold at a train station. The border crossing records were under a different surname. He stood on the platform for a long time. Then he went home, and he ruled his kingdom, and he did not speak her name aloud to anyone. Seraphine had made the right decision. She was almost completely sure of it. She had built a small, careful life in Velhaven, a neutral city where wolves and humans lived alongside each other and no single pack held authority over anyone. She worked at a print archive, cataloging old documents and restoring damaged records. She was good at it. She liked the quiet of it. She liked that nobody there knew her family name, or cared about bloodline rankings, or looked at her like she was something to be apologized for. She kept her wolf calm. She kept her head down. She made 2 friends, a human woman named Didara who brought her coffee every morning without being asked, and an older wolf named Gregor, who had also left his pack for reasons he never fully explained. She went to the small market on Sundays. She read in the evenings. She did not think about the Great Hall. She did not think about cedar and iron and winter cold. She did not think about the way the air in that room had changed when he walked through the door, like a pressure drop before a storm. She was almost completely sure she had made the right decision. Her wolf, who she had never named, a small punishment she had quietly carried since she was a teenager, did not agree. She paced, she pressed, she filled Seraphine's dreams with silver eyes, and a low voice, and the particular feeling of standing at the edge of something enormous, and stepping back from it. Seraphine woke from those dreams, lay still in the dark, and reminded herself of the facts. Her father had betrayed the Crestmore pack. 11 years later, her name still carried that damage. The elders would have challenged the bond. His court would have used her against him. She had stood in that hall and done the math in 3 seconds, and understood that the kindest thing she could do for a man she didn't even know was to disappear before he had to make a choice that would cost him something. She had protected him. That was what she told herself. She told herself this for 2 years and 7 months. She came home because of Eli. Her younger brother found her in Velhaven on a wet Tuesday afternoon, standing at her door with his coat soaked through, and his face showing the particular expression of someone who has been traveling for a very long time and is not sure they will be welcomed. She let him in and made him tea, and listened while he explained that their mother was unwell, that the family's remaining land was under dispute with the local pack authority, and that he needed someone who knew how to talk to councils without falling apart. Seraphine packed a bag and went with him. She was sitting in a council waiting room 3 days later, filling out land dispute paperwork with Eli beside her, when the door at the far end of the corridor opened. She heard his footsteps before she saw him. There was something about the way he moved, a particular weight and steadiness, that she recognized the way you recognize a voice you've only heard once but have somehow never forgotten. She looked up. Dorian Ashvale walked through the door with his beta and 2 guards. There for a regional summit she had no possible way of knowing was scheduled. He was looking down at something Ren was saying to him. He hadn't seen her yet. She stood up from her chair slowly, with no plan at all. He looked up. 40 feet of corridor between them. Clean white light. The soft sound of someone's papers shuffling at a nearby desk. She watched something move through his face. Not shock exactly, because he controlled his face too well for that, but a shift, like a change in weather. Beside him, Ren caught his arm briefly and then let go. Dorian walked across the room in 8 steps and stopped 2 feet in front of her. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe she had simply not let herself remember clearly. "You're going to sit back down," he said, very quietly, "and you're going to tell me your name, your real one." Seraphine looked at him for a long moment. Then she sat down, and she told him everything. They ended up in an empty conference room at the end of the hall. Ren stood outside the door. Eli waited somewhere down the corridor, confused and slightly alarmed. Nobody disturbed them. Seraphine talked for a long time. She told him about her father, and what his betrayal had cost her family, and the way that damage had followed her into every room she had ever tried to enter with her head up. She told him about standing in the great hall and feeling the bond snap into place like a key turning in a lock, and understanding, in the same instant, exactly what it would mean if she stayed. She told him that the elders would have challenged the union, that his court would have used her history against him, that she had looked at him, a man she did not know, and made a decision to protect him from a problem he didn't yet know he had. She told him she thought she was doing the right thing. When she finished, the room was very quiet. Dorian was looking at the table between them. He stayed like that for long enough that she began to wonder if he was simply going to stand up and leave. Then he said, "You decided what I could handle, without asking me." She opened her mouth and closed it again. He wasn't wrong, and she didn't have a clean answer for it. He told her, and he spoke slowly, the way someone speaks when they are choosing each word carefully, because they understand the weight of it, that for almost 3 years, he had ruled a kingdom with Kale gone quiet inside him, and that every room in Crestmore had felt faintly wrong since the night she left. He told her he had tracked her scent to a train station and stopped, because he had decided that if she had chosen to walk away, then she had her reasons, and he would not be the kind of man who followed a woman who had made a choice. "But you didn't choose to leave me," he said. "You left to protect me. That's different. You should have let me decide whether I needed protecting." Seraphine looked at him across the table. Her wolf, the one she had never named, pressed very gently against her ribs, like someone placing a hand on a door and waiting. "I didn't know you," she said finally. "I still barely know you." "I'm aware," he said. "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" He looked at her steadily. "The point is that you made a decision about my life, to keep me from having to make a hard one, and I spent 3 years living with the result of a choice I never got to make." He paused. "I'm not angry. I just want you to understand that." She did understand it. That was the difficult part. She stayed in the region to help Eli with the land dispute. It took 4 weeks to resolve, with council meetings and paperwork, and 2 tense afternoons sitting across from pack officials who clearly did not enjoy being questioned. Dorian did not leave the region. He found reasons to stay. The summit extended, then a secondary border matter arose, then a follow-up meeting was requested by the local council. Ren managed his schedule without comment, though once, when Dorian glanced at him, Ren was looking at the ceiling with an expression of enormous patience. They had 5 more conversations, then 10, then too many to count. They talked the way 2 careful people talk when they are slowly deciding whether to trust each other, which is to say, slowly and honestly, and sometimes stopping mid-sentence because the honest answer was harder than they expected. He told her about the years of ruling alone and what that particular kind of loneliness felt like from the inside, which surprised her, because she had assumed powerful men did not describe their feelings in words like loneliness. She told him about Velhaven, and Dara who brought her coffee, and the print archive, and the way she had built a life that was peaceful and small, and entirely missing something she could not name out loud. "Sable," she said one evening, quietly, as if finishing a thought she had been having alone. He looked at her. "My wolf," she said. "I never named her. I think her name is Sable." He was quiet for a moment. "She's been waiting a long time for that." "I know," Seraphine said. "I wasn't being fair to her." The formal bonding, when it happened, was quiet. Pack elders submitted their objections in writing, and Dorian reviewed each one, and overruled them with the calm of a man who has already made up his mind, and is completing a formality. His court adjusted, as courts always adjust when they understand that the decision is final. None of that is the important part. The important part happened earlier, on an evening near the end of the 4th week, when Seraphine was standing at a window in the Crestmore estate, a building still full of rooms that did not yet feel like hers, watching the last of the daylight leave the hills. She heard him come in behind her. He didn't say anything. He came and stood beside her at the window, not touching, not pushing, just present in the particular way he had of making a room feel settled and solid. They stood there together until the moon came up. "You could have found me sooner," she said at last. Not as an accusation, just a truth. "You could have stayed," he said. Also not as an accusation, also just a truth. The moon was full and white above the hills. Somewhere deep in her chest, Sable went still. Not the stillness of grief or waiting, but the stillness of something that has finally, after a very long time, arrived exactly where it was always going. Seraphine exhaled slowly. Beside her, she felt Dorian do the same.